4:15 Express by Amelia B. Edwards. The events which I am about to relate took place between 9 and 10 years ago. Sebastopol had fallen in the early spring. The Peace of Paris had been concluded since March, and I, returning home after my first northward journey since the war, was well pleased with the prospect of spending the month of December under the hospitable and thoroughly English roof of my excellent friend Jonathan J. Esquire, of Dumbleton Manor, Clayborough, East Anglia. My way lay by the great East Anglian line as far as Clayborough Station, where I was to be met by one of the Dumbleton carriages, and conveyed across the remaining 9 miles of country. Having arrived some 7 minutes before the starting of the train, and by the connivance of the guard taken sole possession of an empty compartment, I lighted my travelling lamp, made myself particularly snug, and settled down to the undisturbed enjoyment of a book and a cigar. Great, therefore, was my disappointment when, at the last moment, a gentleman came hurrying along the platform, glanced into my carriage, opened the locked door with a private key, and stepped in. It struck me at first glance that I had seen him before. A tall, spare man, thin-lipped, light-eyed, with an ungraceful stoop in the shoulders, and scant grey hair, worn somewhat long upon the collar. He carried a light waterproof coat, an umbrella, and a large brown box, which he placed under the seat. I now recognized my companion. I had met him, as I distinctly remembered, some 3 years before, at the very house for which, in all probability, he was now bound, like myself. His name was Dwerrihouse. He was a lawyer by profession, and, if I was not greatly mistaken, was first cousin to the wife of my host. I thought, observing him by the vague mixture of lamplight and twilight, that Mrs. Jepp's cousin looked all the worse for the 3 years' wear and tear which had gone over his head since our last meeting. He was very pale, and had a restless light in his eye that I did not remember to have observed before. The anxious lines, too, around his mouth were deepened. There was a cavernous hollow look about his cheeks, and temples which seemed to speak of sickness or sorrow. When he glanced at me, for the 3rd or 4th time, I ventured to address him. "Mr. John Dwerrihouse, I think?" "That is my name," he replied. "I had the pleasure of meeting you at Dumbleton about 3 years ago." Mr. Dwerrihouse bowed. "I thought I knew your face," he said, "but your name, I regret to say—" "Langford, William Langford. I have known Jonathan since we were boys at Merchant Taylor's, and I generally spend a few weeks at Dumbleton in the shooting season. I suppose we're bound for the same destination?" "Not if you are on your way to the Manor," he replied. "I am travelling upon business. You have heard, perhaps, we are about to construct a branch line from Blackwater to Stockbridge." "Ah, you're an East Anglian director, I presume." "My interest in the company," replied Mr. Dwerrihouse, "is threefold. I am a director, I am a considerable shareholder, and, as the head of the firm of Dwerrihouse and Craik, I am the company's principal solicitor." Loquacious, a little self-important, full of his pet project, and apparently unable to talk on any other subject, Mr. Dwerrihouse then went on to tell of the opposition he had encountered and the obstacles he had overcome in the cause of the Stockbridge branch. I was entertained with a multitude of local details and local grievances, the rapacity of one squire, the impracticability of another, and so on, till my head ached, and my attention flagged, and my eyes kept closing in spite of every effort I made to keep them open. At length I was roused by these words: £75,000 cash down. £75,000 cash down, I repeated in the liveliest tone I could assume. That is a heavy sum. A heavy sum to carry here, replied Mr. Dwerrihouse, pointing significantly to his breast pocket, but a mere fraction of what we shall ultimately have to pay. You do not mean that you have £75,000 at this moment upon your person? My good sir, I have. Have I not been telling you so for the last hour? Said Mr. Dwerrihouse. That money has to be paid at full at 8:30 this evening, at the office of Sir Thomas's solicitors, on completion of the end of sale. But how will you get across by night, from Blackwater to Stockbridge, with £75,000 in your pocket? To Stockbridge, echoed the lawyer. I find I have made myself very imperfectly understood. I thought I had explained how this sum only carries us as far as Mallingford, the first stage, as it were, of our journey, and how our route from Blackwater to Mallingford lies entirely through Sir Thomas Little's property. Oh, I beg your pardon, I stammered. I fear my thoughts were wandering. So you only go as far as Mallingford tonight? Precisely. I shall get a conveyance from the Blackwater Arms. And you? Oh, Jelf sends a trap to meet me at Clayborough. Can I be the bearer of any message from you? Oh, you may say, if you please, Mr. Langford, that I wished I could have been your companion all the way, and that I will come over, if possible, before Christmas. Right, nothing more. Mr. Dwerrihouse smiled grimly. Well, he said, you may tell my cousin that she need not burn the hall down in my honour this time, and I shall be obliged if she will order the blue room chimney to be swept before I arrive. That sounds tragic, I said. You had a conflagration on the occasion of your last visit to Dumbleton? Something like it. There had been no fire lighted in my bedroom since the spring. The flue was foul, and the rooks had built in it, so when I went up to dress for dinner, I found the room full of smoke, and the chimney on fire. Are we already at Blackwater? The train had gradually come to a pause, while Mr. Dwerrihouse was speaking, and, putting my head out of the window, I could see the station some few hundred yards ahead, and there was another train before us blocking the way, and the guard was making use of the delay to collect the Blackwater tickets. I had scarcely ascertained our position when the ruddy-faced official appeared at our carriage door. "Tickets, sir," said he. "I am for Clayborough," I replied, holding out the tiny pink card. He took it, glanced at it by the light of his little lantern, gave it back, looked, as I fancied, somewhat sharply at my fellow traveller, and disappeared. "We did not ask for yours," I said, with some surprise. "They never do," replied Mr. Dwerrihouse. "They all know me, and of course I travel free." "Blackwater! Blackwater!" cried the porter, running along the platform beside us as we glided into the station. Mr. Dwerrihouse pulled out his deed-box. He took down his umbrella and prepared to be gone. "Many thanks, Mr. Langford, for your society," he said, with old-fashioned courtesy. "I wish you a good evening." "Good evening," I replied, putting out my hand. But he either did not see it, or did not choose to see it, and, slightly lifting his hat, stepped out upon the platform. Having done this, he moved away slowly, and mingled with the departing crowd. Leaning forward to watch him out of sight, I trod upon something which proved to be a cigar-case. It had fallen, no doubt, from the pocket of his waterproof coat, and was made of Moroccan leather, with a silver monogram upon the side. I sprang out of the carriage, just as the guard came to lock me in. "Is there 1 minute to spare?" I asked eagerly. "The gentleman who travelled down with me from town has dropped his cigar-case. He is not yet out of the station." "Just 1.5 minutes, sir," replied the guard. "You must be quick." I dashed along the platform as fast as my feet could carry me. It was a large station, and Mr. Dwerrihouse had by this time got more than half-way to the far end. I, however, saw him distinctly moving slowly with the stream. Then, as I drew nearer, I saw that he had met some friend, that they were walking together and talking, that they presently fell back somewhat from the crowd, and stood aside in earnest conversation. I made for the spot where they were waiting. There was a vivid gas jet just above their heads, and the light fell full upon their faces. I saw both distinctly, the face of Mr. Dwerrihouse and the face of his companion. Running, breathless, eager, as I was, getting in the way of porters and passengers, and fearful every instant lest I should see the train moving on without me, I yet observed that the newcomer was considerably younger and shorter than the director, and that he was sandy-haired, mustachioed, small-featured, and dressed in a close-cut suit of Scottish tweed. I was now within a few yards of them. I ran against a stout gentleman. I was nearly knocked down by a huge luggage truck. I stumbled over a carpet bag, and gained the spot just as the driver's whistle was warning me to return. To my utter stupefaction, they were no longer there. I had seen them but 2 seconds before, and they were gone. I stood still. I looked to right and left. I saw no sign of them in any direction. It was as if the platform had gaped and swallowed them. "There were 2 gentlemen standing here a moment ago," I said to a porter at my elbow. "Which way have they gone?" "I saw no gentlemen, sir," replied the guard. The whistle shrilled out again. The guard, far up on the platform, held up his arm and shouted for me to come on. "If you're going to get by this train, sir," said the porter, "you must run for it." I did run. I just gained the carriage as the train began to move. I was shoved in by the guard, and left breathless and bewildered, with Mr. Dwerrihouse's cigar-case still in my hand. It was the strangest disappearance in the world. It was like a transformation trick in a pantomime. They were there one moment, palpably there, talking with the gaslight full upon their faces. Then, the next moment, they were gone. There was no door near, no window, no staircase. It was a mere patch of barren platform, tapestried with big advertisements. Could anything be more mysterious? It was not worth thinking about, and yet for my life I could not help pondering upon it, wondering, conjecturing, turning it over and over in my mind, my beating brains, for a solution of the enigma. I thought of it all the way from Blackwater to Clayborough. I thought of it all the way from Clayborough to Dumbleton, as I rattled along the smooth highway in a trim dog-cart drawn by a splendid black mare and driven by a silent and dapper East Anglian groom. We did the last 9 miles in something less than an hour, and pulled up before the lodge gates as the church clock was striking 7:30. A couple of minutes more, and the warm glow of the lighted hall was flooding out upon the gravel. A hearty grasp was on my hand, and a clear, jovial voice was bidding me, "Welcome to Dumbleton." I am not going to describe either the guests or the dinner that night. All provincial parties bear the strictest family resemblance, and I am not aware that an East Anglian banquet offers any exception to the rule. There was the usual country baronet and his wife. There were the usual country parsons and their wives. There was the usual sempiternal turkey and lunch of venison. There is nothing new under the sun. At length there came a pause. The entrees had been removed, and the turkey had come upon the scene. The conversation all along had been of the most languid, but at this moment it happened to have stagnated altogether. Moved by an unlucky impulse, I thought I would relate my adventure. "By the way, Jelf," I began, "I came down part of the way today with a friend of yours." "Indeed," said the master of the feast, slicing scientifically into the breast of the turkey. "With whom, pray?" "It was no less a person than your wife's cousin, Mr. John Dwerrihouse." Jonathan Jelf laid down his knife and fork. Mrs. Jelf looked at me in a strange, startled way, and never said a word. "And he desired me to tell you, madam, that you need not take the trouble to burn the hall down in his honour this time, but only to have the chimney of the blue room swept before his arrival." Before I had reached the end of my sentence, I became aware of something ominous in the faces of the guests. I felt I had said something which had better been left unsaid, and, for some unexplained reason, my words had evoked a general consternation. I sat dumbfounded, not daring to utter another syllable for at least 2 whole minutes. There was dead silence around the table. The guests had hitherto been simply dull, but now they were evidently uncomfortable, embarrassed. The dessert had scarcely been placed upon the table when the ladies left the room. I seized the opportunity to select a vacant chair next to a certain Captain Prendergast. "In heaven's name," I whispered, "what was the matter just now? What had I said?" You mentioned the name of John Dwerrihouse." "Well, what of that? I had seen him not 2 hours before." "It was a most astounding circumstance that you should have seen him," said Captain Prendergast. "Are you sure it was he?" "As sure as my own identity. We were talking all the way between London and Blackwater. Why does that surprise you?" "Because," replied Captain Prendergast, dropping his voice now to the lowest whisper, "because John Dwerrihouse absconded 3 months ago with £75,000 of the company's money, and he has never been heard of since." John Dwerrihouse had absconded 3 months ago, and I had seen him only a few hours back. John Dwerrihouse had embezzled £75,000 of the company's money, yet told me that he carried that sum upon his person. Were ever facts so strangely congruous, so difficult to reconcile? How should he have ventured again into the light of day? How dared he show himself along the line? Above all, what had he been doing those mysterious 3 months of disappearance? Perplexing questions these, questions which at once suggested themselves to the minds of all concerned, but which admitted of no easy solution. I could find no reply to them. Captain Prendergast had not even a suggestion to offer. Jonathan Jelf, who seized the first opportunity of drawing me aside and learning all I had to tell, was more amazed and bewildered than either of us. He came to my room that night, when all the guests were gone, and we talked the whole thing over from every point of view, without, it must be confessed, arriving at any kind of conclusion. "I do ask you," he said, "whether you can have mistaken your man. Is that possible?" "As impossible that I should mistake some stranger for yourself," I said. "It is not a question of looks or voice, but of facts. That he should have alluded to the fire in the blue room is proof enough of John Dwerrihouse's identity. How did he look?" "Older, I thought, considerably older. Paler, more anxious. He has had enough to make him look anxious, anyhow," said my friend. "Be he innocent or guilty?" "I am inclined to believe he is innocent," I replied. "He showed no embarrassment when I addressed him, no uneasiness when the guard came round. His conversation was open to a fault. I might almost say that he talked too freely of his business, the business he had at hand. That is again strange, for I know no one more reticent on such subjects. He actually told you that he had £75,000 in his pocket." "He did." "My wife has an idea about it, and she may be right." "Oh? What idea?" "Well, she fancies, women are so clever, you know, at putting themselves inside other people's motives. She fancies he was tempted that he did actually take the money, and that he has been concealing himself these 3 months in some wild part of the country, struggling possibly with his conscience all the time, and daring neither to abscond with the booty nor to come back and restore it. But now he has come back, I said. Well, that is the point. She conceives he has probably thrown himself upon the company's mercy, made restitution of the money, and being forgiven, is permitted to carry the business as if nothing whatever happened. The last, I replied, is an impossible case. Mrs. Jelf thinks like a generous, delicate-minded woman, no doubt, but not in the least like a board of railway directors. They would never carry forgiveness so far. No, I fear not, and yet it is the only conjecture that bears a semblance of likelihood. However, we can run over to Clayborough tomorrow and see if anything is to be learned. By the way, Prendergast tells me you picked up his cigar case. Oh, I did, yes, and look, here it is. Jelf took the cigar case, examined it by the light of the lamp, and said at once that it was, beyond doubt, Mr. Dwerrihouse's property, and that he remembered to have seen him use it. Here, too, is his monogram on the side, he added, a big J, transfixing a capital D. He used to carry the same on his note-paper. Well, I said, it offers at all events a proof that I was not dreaming. Yes, but it is time you were asleep and dreaming now. I'm ashamed to have kept you up so long. Good night. Yes, good night. And remember, I'm more than ready to go with you to Clayborough, or Blackwater, or London, or anywhere, if I can be of the least service. Thank you, I know you mean it, old friend, and it may be that I shall put you to the test, but once more, good night. So we parted for that night, and met again in the breakfast-room at 8:30 the next morning. It was a hurried, silent, uncomfortable meal. None of us had slept well, and all were thinking of the same subject. Within 20 minutes after we had left the breakfast table, the dog-cart was brought round, and my friend and I were on the road to Clayborough. "Tell you what it is, Langford," he said, as we sped along between the wintry hedges, "I do not much fancy to bring up Dwerrihouse's name at Clayborough. All the officials know that he is my wife's relation, and the subject just now is hardly a pleasant one. If you don't much mind, we will take the 11:10 to Blackwater. It's an important station. We shall stand a far better chance of picking up information there than at Clayborough." So we took the 11:10, which happened to be an express, and, arriving at Blackwater about 12:15, proceeded at once to prosecute our inquiry. We began by asking for the station-master. "The East Anglian, sir," he said, "is about the last place he would dare to show himself. Why, there isn't a station-master, there isn't a guard, there isn't a porter who doesn't know Mr. Dwerrihouse by sight, as well as he knows his own face in the looking-glass, or who wouldn't telegraph the police as soon as they had set eyes on him at any point along the line. Bless you, sir, there's been a standing order out against him ever since the 25th of September last, I believe." "Can you tell me who took the Blackwater tickets of that train?" "I can, sir. That would be the guard, Benjamin Summers." "And where can I find him?" "You can find him, sir, by staying here, if you please, till 1 o'clock. You'll be coming through with the up express from Crampton, which stays at Blackwater for 10 minutes. We waited for the up express, beguiling the time as best we could by strolling along the Blackwater road till we came almost to the outskirts of the town, from which the station was distant nearly a couple of miles. By 1 o'clock we were back again upon the platform and waiting for the train. It came punctually, and I at once recognized the ruddy-faced guard who had gone down with my train the evening before. "The gentleman wants to ask you something about Mr. Dwerrihouse, Summers," said the station-master, by way of introduction. The guard flashed a keen glance from my face to Jelf's, and back again to mine. "Mr. Dwerrihouse, the late director?" he said, interrogatively. "The same," replied my friend. "Should you know him if you saw him?" "Anywhere, sir?" Do you know he was in the 4:15 express yesterday afternoon?" "He was not, sir." "How can you answer so positively?" "Because I looked into every carriage, and I saw every face in that train. I could take my oath, sir, Mr. Dwerrihouse was not in it. This gentleman was," he added, turning upon me. "I don't know if I ever saw him before in my life, but I remember his face perfectly well. You nearly missed your train, taking your seat in time at the station, sir, and you got out at Clayborough." "Quite true, guard, yes," I replied. "But do you not also remember the face of the gentleman who travelled down with me in the carriage as far as here?" "Oh, it was my impression, sir, that you travelled down alone," said Summers, with a look of surprise. "By no means. I had a fellow traveller as far as Blackwater, and it was in trying to restore him the cigar-case which he had dropped in the carriage that I so nearly let you go on without me." "I remember you saying something about a cigar-case, certainly," replied the guard, "but, "Oh, you asked me for my ticket just before we entered the station." "I did, sir." "Well, then you must have seen him. He sat in the corner, next to the very door through which you came." "No, indeed, sir, I saw no one." I looked at Jelf. I began to think the guard was in the ex-director's confidence, and paid for his silence. "If I had seen another traveller, I should have asked him for his ticket, sir," added Summers. "Did you see me ask for his ticket, sir?" "I observed you did not ask for it at the time, but he explained by saying—" I hesitated. I feared I might be telling too much, and so I broke off abruptly. The guard and station master exchanged glances. The former looked impatiently at his watch. "I'm obliged to go on in 4 minutes, sir," he said. "Oh, one final question, then," interposed Jelf with a sort of desperation. "If this gentleman's fellow traveller had been Mr. John Dwerrihouse, and he had been sitting in the corner next to the door by which you took the tickets, could you have failed to see and recognise him?" "No, sir, it would have been quite impossible, sir." "And you are certain you did not see him?" "As I said before, sir, and I would take my oath, I did not see him. And if it wasn't that I don't like to contradict a gentleman, I would say I would also take my oath that this gentleman was quite alone in the carriage the whole way from London to Clayborough. Why, sir," he added, dropping his voice so as to be inaudible to the station-master, who had been called away to speak to some person close by, "you expressly asked me to give a compartment to yourself, if you remember, and I did so. I locked you in, and you were so good as to give me something for myself." "Yes, but Mr. Dwerrihouse had a key of his own." "I never saw him, sir. I saw no one in that compartment but yourself. Beg pardon, sir, my time's up." With that, the ruddy guard touched his cap and was gone. In another minute, the heavy panting of the engine began afresh, and the train glided slowly out of the station. We looked at each other for some time in silence. I was the first to speak. "Mr. Benjamin Southers knows more than he chooses to tell," I said. You think so?" "It must be. He could not have come to the door without seeing him. It's impossible." "There is one thing not impossible, my dear fellow." "What?" "That you may have fallen asleep and dreamed the whole thing." "Could I dream of a branch line I have never heard of? Could I dream of 101 business details he had told me that had no interest for me? Could I dream of the £75,000? Perhaps you might have seen or heard some vague account of the affair while you were abroad. It might have made no impression on you at the time, and might have come back to you in your dreams, recalled perhaps by the names of the stations on the line. What about the fire in the chimney, in the blue room? Should I have heard of that during my journey? Well, no, I admit that is a difficulty. And what about the cigar-case? Yes, by Jove, there is the cigar-case. That is a stubborn fact. Well, it's a mysterious affair, and it will need a better detective than myself, I fancy, to clear it up. I suppose we may as well go home." A week had not gone by when I received a letter from the secretary of the East Anglian Railway Company requesting the favour of my attendance at a special board meeting, not then many days distant. No reasons were given, and no apologies offered for this demand upon my time. But they had heard, it was clear, of my inquiries about the missing director, and had a mind to put me through some sort of official examination upon the subject. Being still a guest at Dumbleton Hall, I had to go up to London for the purpose, and Jonathan Jelf accompanied me. I found the direction of the Great East Anglian line represented by a party of some 12 or 14 gentlemen, seated in solemn conclave round a huge green baize table in a gloomy boardroom adjoining the London terminus. We were placed at the table, and the inquiry proceeded in due form. I was first asked if I knew Mr. John Dwerrihouse, how long I had been acquainted with him, and whether I could identify him at sight. I was then asked when I had seen him last, to which I replied on the 4th of this present month, December 1856. The chairman then inquired whether I had had any communication with my fellow traveller, whereupon I related, as nearly as I could remember it, the whole bulk and substance of Mr. John Dwerrihouse's diffuse information respecting the new branch line. To all this the board listened with profound attention, while the chairman presided and the secretary took notes. I then produced the cigar case. It was passed from hand to hand, and recognized by all. There was not a man present who did not remember that plain cigar case, with its silver monogram, or to whom it seemed anything less than entirely corroborative of my evidence. When at length I had told all that I had to tell, the chairman whispered something to the secretary. The secretary touched a silver bell, and the guard, Benjamin Summers, was ushered into the room. He was then examined as carefully as myself. He declared that he knew Mr. John Dwerrihouse perfectly well, that he could not be mistaken in him, and that he remembered going, on the afternoon in question, down on the 4:15. He remembered me, and he remembered that there being 1 or 2 empty first-class compartments on that special afternoon, he had, in compliance with my request, placed me in a carriage by myself. He was positive that I remained alone in that compartment all the way from London to Clayborough. He was ready to take an oath on that Mr. Dwerrihouse was neither in that carriage with me, nor in any compartment of that train. He remembered distinctly to have examined my ticket at Blackwater, was certain that there was no one else in the carriage at the time, nor could he have failed to observe a second person, if there had been one. Had that second person been Mr. John Dwerrihouse, he should have been double shocked. Had that person been Mr. John Dwerrihouse, he would quietly have double-locked the door of the carriage, and have at once given information to the Blackwater station-master. So clear, so decisive, so ready was Summers with his testimony, that the board looked fairly puzzled. "You heard this person's statement, Mr. Langford," said the chairman. "It contradicts yours in every particular. What have you to say in reply?" "I can only repeat what I have said before. I am quite as positive of the truth of my own assertions as Mr. Summers can be of the truth of his." "You say that Mr. Dwerrihouse alighted at Blackwater, and that he was in possession of a private key. Are you sure that he had not alighted by means of that key before the guard came round for the tickets?" "I am quite positive that he did not leave the carriage till the train had fairly entered the station, and the other Blackwater passengers alighted. I even saw that he was met there by a friend." "Indeed? Did you see that person distinctly?" "Quite distinctly." "Can you describe his appearance?" "I think so. He was short, very slight, sandy-haired, and with a bushy moustache and beard. And he wore a loosely fitting suit of grey tweed. His age I should take to be of about 38 or 40. Did Mr. Dwerrihouse leave the station in this person's company? I cannot tell. I saw them walking together down the platform, and then I saw them standing aside beneath the gas jet, talking quite earnestly. After that I lost sight of them quite suddenly, and then my train went off, and I with it. The chairman and secretary conferred together in an undertone. The directors whispered to one another. One or two looked suspiciously at the guard. I could see that my evidence remained unshaken, and that, like myself, they suspected some complicity between the guard and the defaulter. "How far did you conduct the 4:15 express on the day in question, Summers?" asked the chairman. "All through, sir," replied the guard, "from London to Crampton." "How was it that you were not relieved at Clayborough? I thought there was always a change of guards at Clayborough." "There used to be, sir, till the new regulations came in force, last midsummer, since when the guard in charge of the express trains, well, he goes the whole way through." The chairman turned to the secretary. "I think it would be well," he said, "if we had the day-book to refer to upon this point." Again the secretary touched the silver hand-bell, and desired the porter in attendance to summon Mr. Raikes. From a word or two dropped by another of the directors, I gathered that Mr. Raikes was one of the under-secretaries. He came, a small, slight, sandy-haired, keen-eyed man, with an eager, nervous manner, and a forest of light beard and moustache. He just showed himself at the door of the boardroom, and, being requested to bring a certain day-book from a certain shelf in a certain room, bowed and vanished. He was there such a moment, and the surprise of seeing him was so great and sudden, that it was not till the door had closed upon him that I found voice to speak. He was no sooner gone, however, than I sprang to my feet. "That person," I said, "is the same who met Mr. Dwerrihouse upon the platform at Blackwater." There was a general movement of surprise. The chairman looked grave and somewhat agitated. "Take care, Mr. Langford," he said. "Take care what you say. I am as positive of his identity as of my own. Do you consider the consequence of your words? Do you consider that you are bringing a charge of the gravest character against one of the company's servants? I am willing to put my oath if necessary. The man who came to that door a minute ago is the man I saw talking with Mr. Dwerrihouse on the Blackwater platform. Were he 20 times the company's servant, I could say neither more nor less." The chairman turned again to the guard. "Did you see Mr. Raikes in the train or on the platform?" he asked. Summers shook his head. "I am confident Mr. Raikes was not in the train," he said, "and I certainly did not see him on the platform." The chairman turned next to the secretary. "Mr. Raikes is in your office, Mr. Hunter," he said. "Can you remember if he was absent on the 4th instant?" "I do not think he was," replied the secretary, "but I am not prepared to speak positively. I have been away most afternoons lately myself, and Mr. Raikes might easily have absented himself if he had been disposed." At this moment the under-secretary returned with the day-book under his arm. "Be pleased to refer, Mr. Raikes," said the chairman, "to the entries of the 4th instant, and see what Benjamin Summers's duties were on that day." Mr. Raikes threw open the cumbrous volume and ran a practised eye and finger down some 3 or 4 successive columns of entries. Stopping suddenly at the foot of a page, he then read aloud that Benjamin Summers had on that day conducted the 4:15 express from London to Crampton. The chairman leaned forward in his seat, looked the under-secretary full in the face, and said quite sharply and suddenly, "And where were you, Mr. Raikes, on that same afternoon?" "I, sir?" You, Mr. Raikes, where were you on the afternoon and the evening of the 4th of the present month?" "Here, sir, in Mr. Hunter's office. Where else should I be?" There was a dash of trepidation in the Under-Secretary's voice. "We have some reason for believing, Mr. Raikes, that you were absent on that afternoon without leave. Could this be the case?" "Certainly not. I have not had a day's holiday since September. Mr. Hunter will bear me out in this." Mr. Hunter repeated what he had previously said on the subject, but added that the clerks in the adjoining office would be certain to know, whereupon the senior clerk, a grave, middle-aged person in green glasses, was summoned and interrogated. His testimony cleared the Under-Secretary at once. He declared that Mr. Raikes had in no instance, to his knowledge, been absent during office hours since his return from his annual holiday in September. I was confounded. The chairman turned to me with a smile in which a shade of covert annoyance was scarcely apparent. "You hear, Mr. Langford?" he said. "I hear, sir, but my conviction remains unshaken." "I fear, Mr. Langford, that your convictions are very insufficiently based," replied the chairman with a doubtful cough. "I fear that you dream dreams and mistake them for actual occurrences. It is a dangerous habit of mind, and might lead to dangerous results. Mr. Raikes here could have found himself in an unpleasant position, had he not proved to have a satisfactory alibi." I was about to reply, but he gave me no time. "I think, gentlemen," he went on, addressing the board, "that we should be wasting time to push this inquiry further. Mr. Langford's evidence would seem to be of equal value throughout. The testimony of Benjamin Summers disproves his first statement, and the testimony of the last witness disproves the second. I think we may conclude that Mr. Langford fell asleep in the train on the occasion of his journey to Clayborough, and dreamed an unusually vivid and circumstantial dream, of which, however, we have now heard quite enough. There are few things more annoying than to find one's positive convictions met with incredulity. I could not help feeling impatient at the turn that affairs had taken. I was not proof against the civil sarcasm of the chairman's manner. Most intolerable of all, however, was the quiet smile lurking about the corners of Benjamin Summers' mouth, and the half-triumphant, half-malicious gleam in the eyes of the Under-Secretary. The man was evidently puzzled and somewhat alarmed. His looks seemed furtively to interrogate me. Who was I? What did I want? Why had I come there? To do him an ill turn with his employers? What was it to me whether or no he was absent without leave? Seeing all this, and perhaps irritated by it more than the thing deserved, I begged to detain the attention of the board a moment longer. Jelf plucked me impatiently by the sleeve. "Better let this thing drop," he whispered. "The chairman's had enough. He's right, you dreamed it, and the less said now the better." I was not to be silenced, however, in this fashion. I had yet something to say, and I would say it. It was to this effect: that dreams were not usually productive of tangible results, and that I had requested to know in what way the chairman conceived I had evolved from my dream so substantial and well-made a delusion as the cigar case, which I had the honour to place before him at the commencement of the interview. "The cigar case, I admit, Mr. Langford," the chairman replied, "is a very strong point in your evidence. It is your only strong point, however, and there is just a possibility that we may all be misled by a mere accidental resemblance. Will you permit me to see the case again, please?" "It is unlikely," I said as I handed it to him, "that any other should bear precisely this monogram, and yet be in all other particulars exactly similar." The chairman examined it for a moment in silence, and then passed it to Mr. Hunter. Mr. Hunter turned it over and shook his head. "This is no mere resemblance," he said. "It is Mr. John Dwerrihouse's cigar case. I certainly remember it perfectly. I have seen it 100 times. "I believe I may say the same," added the chairman. "Yet how to account for the way in which Mr. Langford asserts it came into his possession?" "I can only repeat," I replied, "that I found it on the floor of the carriage after Mr. Dwerrihouse had alighted. It was leaning out to look after him that I trod upon it, and it was in running after him, for the purpose of restoring it, that I saw, or believed I saw, Mr. Raikes standing aside with him in earnest conversation." Again I felt Jonathan Jelf plucking at my sleeve. "Look at Raikes," he whispered. "Look at Raikes." I turned to where the Under-Secretary had been standing a moment before, and saw him, white as death, with his lips trembling and livid, stealing towards the door. To conceive a sudden, strange, and indefinite suspicion, to fling myself in his way, to take him by the shoulders as if he were a child, and to turn his craven face perforce towards the board, were with me the work of an instant. "Look at him!" I exclaimed. "Look at his face! I ask no better witness to the truth of my words." The chairman's brow darkened. "Mr. Raikes," he said sternly, "if you know anything, you had better speak." Vainly trying to wrench himself from my grasp, the Under-Secretary stammered out an incoherent denial. "Let me go," he said. I know nothing. You have no right to detain me. Let me go." "Did you or did you not meet Mr. John Dwerrihouse at Blackwater Station? The charge brought against you is either true or false. If true, you will do well to throw yourself upon the mercy of the board, and make full confession of all that you know." The Under-Secretary wrung his hands in an agony of helpless terror. "I was away," he cried. "I was away, hundreds of miles away at the time. I know nothing about it. I have nothing to confess. I am innocent. I call God to witness I am innocent." 200 miles away?" echoed the chairman. "What do you mean?" "I was in Devonshire. I had 3 weeks' leave of absence. I appealed to Mr. Hunter. Mr. Hunter knows I had 3 weeks' leave of absence. I was in Devonshire all the time. I can prove I was in Devonshire." Seeing him so abject, so incoherent, so wild with apprehension, the directors began to whisper gravely among themselves, while one got quietly up and called the porter to guard the door. "What has your being in Devonshire to do with the matter?" said the chairman. "When were you in Devonshire?" "Mr. Raikes took his leave in September," said the secretary, "about the time when Mr. Dwerrihouse disappeared." "Well, I never heard that he had disappeared till I came back." "That must remain to be proved," said the chairman. "I shall at once put this matter in the hands of the police. In the meanwhile, Mr. Raikes, being myself a magistrate, and used to deal with these cases, I advise you to offer no resistance, but to confess, while your confession may yet do you service. As for your accomplice—" Here the frightened wretch fell upon his knees. "I had no accomplice," he cried. "Only have mercy on me. Only spare me, and I will confess. I will confess all. I didn't mean to harm him. I didn't mean to hurt a hair of his head. Only have mercy on me and let me go." The chairman rose in his place, pale and agitated. "Good heavens!" he exclaimed. "What horrible mystery is this? What does it mean?" "As sure as there is a God in heaven," said Jonathan Jelf, "it means that murder has been done." "No, no, no!" shrieked Raikes, still upon his knees and cowering like a beaten hound. "Not murder. No jury that ever sat could bring in murder. I thought I had only stunned him. I never meant to do more than stun him. Manslaughter, you see, manslaughter, not murder." Overcome by the horror of this unexpected revelation, the chairman covered his face with his hand, and for a moment or two remained silent. "Miserable man," he said at length, "you have betrayed yourself. You bade me to confess. You urged me to throw myself upon the mercy of the board. You have confessed to a crime which no one suspected you of having committed," replied the chairman, "and which this board has no power either to punish or to forgive. All I can do for you is advise you submit to the law and plead guilty, and to conceal nothing. When did you do this deed?" The guilty man rose to his feet and leaned heavily on the table. His answer came reluctantly, like the speech of one dreaming. On the 22nd of September. On the 22nd of September? I looked at Jonathan Jell's face, and he at mine. I felt my own paling, with a strange sense of wonder and dread. I saw him blanch suddenly, even to the lips. "Merciful heaven," he whispered. "What was it, then, that you saw in the train?" What was it that I saw in the train? That question remains unanswered to this day. I have never been able to reply to it. I only know that it bore the living likeness of the murdered man, whose body had then been lying some 10 weeks under a rough pile of branches and brambles and rotting leaves at the bottom of a deserted chalk pit, about halfway between Blackwater and Mallingford. I know that it spoke and moved and looked as that man spoke and moved and looked in life, that I heard, or seemed to hear, things related which I could never otherwise have learned, that I was guided, as it were, by that vision on the platform to the identification of the murderer, and that a passive instrument, myself, I was destined, by means of these mysterious teachings, to bring about the ends of justice. For these things I have never been able to account. As for the matter of the cigar case, it proved on inquiry that the carriage which I travelled in down that afternoon to Clayborough had not been in use for several weeks, and was, in point of fact, the same in which poor John Dwerrihouse had performed his final journey. The case had doubtless been dropped by him, and had lain unnoticed till I found it. Upon the details of the murder I have no need to dwell. Those who desire more ample particulars may find them, and the written confession of Augustus Raikes, in the files of the Times for 1856. Enough that the Under-Secretary, knowing the history of the new line, and following the negotiation step by step through all its stages, determined to waylay Mr. Dwerrihouse, rob him of the £75,000, and escape to America with his booty. In order to effect these ends, he obtained leave of absence a few days before the time appointed for the payment of the money, secured his passage across the Atlantic in a steamer advertised to start on the 23rd, provided himself with a heavily loaded life-preserver, and went down to Blackwater to await the arrival of his victim. How he met him on the platform with a pretended message from the board, how he offered to conduct him by a short cut across the fields to Mallingford, how, having brought him to a lonely place, he struck him down with a life-preserver, and so killed him, and how, finding what he had done, he dragged the body to the verge of an out-of-the-way chalk pit, and there flung him in it, and piled it over with branches and brambles. They are the facts, still fresh in the memories of those who, like the connoisseurs in De Quincey's famous essay, regard murder as a fine art. Strangely enough, the murderer, having done his work, was afraid to leave the country. He declared that he had not intended to take the director's life, but only to stun him and rob him, and that, finding the blow had killed, he dared not fly, for fear of drawing down suspicion upon his own head. As a mere robber he could have been safe in the States, but as a murderer he would inevitably have been pursued and given up to justice, so he forfeited his passage, returned to the office as usual at the end of his leave, and locked up his ill-gotten thousands till a more convenient opportunity In the meanwhile, he had the satisfaction of finding that Mr. Dwerrihouse was universally believed to have absconded with the money. No one knew how or whither. Whether he meant murder or not, however, Mr. Augustus Raikes paid the full penalty of his crime, and was hanged at the Old Bailey in the second week of January, 1857. Those who desire to make his farther acquaintance may see him any day, admirably done in wax, in the Chamber of Horrors at Madame Tussaud's exhibition in Baker Street. He is there to be found in the midst of a select society of ladies and gentlemen of atrocious memory, dressed in the close-cut tweed suit which he wore on the evening of the murder, and holding in his hand the identical life-preserver with which he committed it.